While tidying up the room, I found Austin's old mobile phone that had been locked for 10 years. After unlocking it, I was shocked to see my sister as the wallpaper. In the Notes app, the heartfelt confession that once moved me to tears had my sister's name as the intended recipient. Suddenly, I understood why the flowers that day were wilted. Because they were second-hand. As I scrolled to the bottom of the notes, everything went black and I was transported back to when I was 18. Austin Dawson, wearing his blue and white school uniform, was planning a confession with his mates. He casually remarked, "It's fine if it fails, I still have Marina as a backup plan." Later, he came to me with those wilted flowers. After he finished reciting his confession, I took a step back and publicly humiliated him. "You? I wouldn't date you if you were the last man on earth." Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. I found Austin's old mobile phone from 10 years ago in the storage room. Back then, he had forgotten the password and after multiple attempts, it got locked for 80,000 hours. It contained many memories from when we were dating. So, I went out and bought a wide-mouth charger specifically for it. By the time I finished cleaning, the phone was fully charged. It showed that in 4 more hours, I could enter the password again. I lay down and scrolled through my own phone for a while. For hours later, I opened the old phone and instinctively entered my birthday as the password. After the phone got locked, Austin had set all his passwords to the same one. My birthday, which was also the day he confessed to me when I was 18. Before I could react, I had already entered all 6 digits. Just as I thought the phone would lock again and I started to panic, it unlocked. The password was correct. What greeted my eyes was a photo of my sister. The screensaver was my sister. I sat up abruptly. There was a surreal feeling creeping over me. The password, it was actually correct. So he hadn't forgotten the password, but deliberately locked the phone? I remembered this phone contained intimate photos of us and sweet chat logs. But now, everything related to me was gone. The photo album was full of pictures of my sister. Her back view, her profile. When she went to dance practice, when she went to the cafeteria. Many, varied snapshots. The chat log between Austin and my sister was particularly intimate and flirtatious. Looking at the timestamps, this was when Austin and I were together. They shamelessly discussed me, using all sorts of ambiguous words. In the end, my sister said she had someone she liked and deleted Austin. The chat log turned into a sea of green text messages. Every word, every sentence, was carved with deep love. This date coincided with the day Austin's phone got locked for 80,000 hours. So, it was because my sister had someone she liked and deleted him that he locked his own phone. I suddenly remembered, yesterday my sister got divorced. And last night, Austin came home drunk and vomited all over the place. That's why I was cleaning today, and found this phone in the storage room. So, Austin had feelings for my sister. From high school, until now. What was I then? My chest felt tight, I could hardly breathe, my whole body was shaking. Inadvertently, I clicked on the Notes app on the phone. The pinned note was a draft of a confession. With trembling hands, I opened it. Every word on it matched exactly what Austin had said when he confessed to me. Oh no. There was one difference. The name he was confessing to in the note was Sabrina Burke, while I am Marina Burke. I suddenly recalled, the day Austin confessed to me, the flowers were wilted. So, they were second-hand. These past years have been nothing but an enormous lie. I felt like I couldn't breathe, then everything went black and I passed out. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in that early winter when I was 17. Leaves were withered and yellow, and the sound of students reciting filled the air. I rushed to the bathroom to splash some water on my face and clear my head. But in my haste, I didn't check the sign and ran into the boys' toilet. As luck would have it, someone came in at that moment. I had no choice but to hide in a stall, my heart pounding. Bro, are you really going to confess to the school beauty? There are so many guys after her. Then, I heard that all too familiar voice. TCH, am I the one confessing or are you? If I'm not scared, why are you? It was Austin Dawson. His nonchalant voice continued, even if it fails, there's always Marina Burke as a backup plan. His mate immediately burst out laughing. That's so like you. If you can't get the school beauty, her sister will do, lol. But it's strange, isn't it? Marina and the school beauty are twins, yet they're as different as night and day, like some genetic mutation. Austin snorted, how can a country mutt compare to a city swan? Her crush on me is quite troublesome. But she's obedient, which makes her convenient to use. His tone was particularly smug, homework, queuing for food, buying drinks, that's all child's play. What I enjoy most is teasing her. If I look at her a bit longer or say a few more words, she gets all shy and flustered, blushing and stammering. It's so much fun. Austin laughed out loud, full of pride. To my ears, it was especially grating. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. Only when their voices faded into the distance did I emerge from the stall. I kept my head down and ran all the way back to the classroom. The bell for class had just rung. Sabrina came in through the door and sat down next to me, shifting her chair away as if avoiding the plague. I couldn't help but glance at her a few times. Indeed, Sabrina and I were as different as heaven and earth. When my mom gave birth to twins, she had limited energy, and my dad's finances were tight. So, after discussing with the family, they decided to raise Sabrina themselves and let my grandparents raise me. Thus, after the first month, I was taken to the countryside by my grandparents. Meanwhile, Sabrina stayed in the city. I was fed formula and rice porridge in the countryside. Sabrina was breastfed and given proper baby food in my mom's arms. At 3 or 4, I played in the mud every day, getting dark from the sun. At the same age, Sabrina had countless princess dresses and was delicate and fair-skinned. The contrast, coupled with who raised us and who we were close to, meant that I was left in the countryside. My mom didn't like me. My grandmother even said, "Your mom doesn't want you anymore." It wasn't until high school, when we were about to face the crucial life milestone of A-levels, that my grandparents had no choice but to send me to the city. When I first arrived at my new home, I initially liked it and didn't feel inferior. But over the years, I inevitably picked up my grandmother's shrewdness and frugality. This made my mom despise me. She belittled and suppressed me time and again, always comparing me to Sabrina. Sabrina loved dancing, so Mom and Dad scrimped and saved to enroll her in dance classes. She did well and won some awards. When she stood there, she was like a graceful swan. And I was the ugly duckling who couldn't be presented in public. In just a year, under the pressure from my parents and the constant comparisons with Sabrina, I became insecure and sensitive. But as fate would have it, after year 11, Sabrina and I were assigned to the same class. Naturally, we sat together. From then on, my world turned completely gray. In the past, I didn't know any better and always felt trapped. But now, I'm Marina Burke from over a decade in the future. The fault was never mine. It never was. Sabrina noticed that I had been staring at her, and she gave me a haughty glance. "What are you looking at?" she snapped. I asked her, "Do you know that Dawson fancies you?" Sabrina lifted her chin. "So many people fancy me. What's so strange about that?" So, she knew. Austin was quite well known at school. There are two types of people everyone knows at school. One is those who excel academically. The other is those who are notorious troublemakers. Austin was the latter. When I had a crush on Austin, I used to secretly write his name in my notebook. Sabrina saw it. She asked me then how I could like a troublemaker like Austin. Of course, I didn't tell her the reason. But she knew I liked Dawson. However, when Austin failed to win her over and then got together with me, she didn't say a word. Not even a warning. In fact, after we got together, she still flirted with Austin. What was she thinking at that time? Enjoying the show? Secretly pleased? Schadenfreude? I took a deep breath, suppressing the urge to confront her. Sabrina seemed to remember something and said in a condescending tone, "Oh, I forgot, you used to like him." Her voice wasn't low, and the classmates around us heard it, all turning to look. I calmly replied, "You're mistaken." I don't have anyone I like. We're so busy in year 13, who has time for dating? We're not like you art students. We'd rather solve a few more practice questions with that time. Sabrina got angry. Marina Burke, what do you mean? I glanced out the window. The teacher's coming. Sabrina had to swallow her words, glaring at me twice. After this class, it would be lunchtime. As usual, Austin would come to our classroom asking me to queue up for his lunch, while chatting with Sabrina to get close to her and giving her small gifts. Sure enough, as soon as the bell rang, Austin was already leaning against our classroom door. After the teacher left, he sauntered in with one hand in his pocket. He rapped his knuckles twice on my desk, with a half-smile. Marina, there's a new dish in the canteen. I heard it's delicious. Meaning he wanted me to get lunch for him. The canteen food was quite hard to get, with mostly just soup left at the back of the queue. My taste was also very different from Austin's. Every time after queuing and getting food for him, the dishes I liked were usually gone. And I had to bring it back to him before I could go back to the canteen to eat. And then wash his dishes after finishing. I felt like I must have been out of my mind before. To have fallen so deeply for him over such trivial things. The more I thought about it, the more annoyed I became. I didn't even give Austin a proper look. He seemed to be losing his composure, but with Sabrina present, he didn't act out. Instead, it was Sabrina who spoke up. Marina, bring me a meal to the dorm. I have something to discuss with Austin now. Imperious and arrogant. Her gaze towards me was full of challenge. She wanted to use Austin to make me jealous and angry. I stood up with a forced smile. No. After saying that, I walked past her, ready to go to the canteen. But at that moment, Austin called out to me, his tone somewhat lecturing. Marina, as a sister, you should listen to your elder sister. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Both of you want me to bring you food? I looked at Austin. Am I your mom? Then I glanced at Sabrina, or your mom? There were other people in the classroom, and hearing this, they burst out laughing. The two of them suddenly looked very displeased. I turned around gracefully, leaving without a backward glance. Austin still wouldn't give up. While I was in the canteen, his lackey came to deliver a message. Austin says he's waiting for you in the classroom. He hopes you won't keep him waiting too long. There was a hint of threat in his words. I completely ignored it. Who did Austin think he was? After enjoying a delicious lunch of roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, I bought a chilled drink and went back to the dormitory for a lovely afternoon nap. With the pressure of A-levels, many students spend their lunch breaks studying in the classroom. Doing practice papers, their minds constantly on edge. I used to be like that too. But today, I just wanted to indulge myself a bit. If Austin wanted to wait, let him wait. As soon as I got to the dormitory, I saw Sabrina was there. She wasn't in the same dorm as me. She looked me up and down as soon as she saw me. Where's my lunch? Sometimes I can't help but marvel at how many people are actually not of sound mind. But because they can take care of themselves, they're treated as normal. Sabrina seemed to suddenly realize, you didn't bring me lunch? She sprang to her feet and shouted at me. Marina, didn't you hear me tell you to bring lunch? What am I supposed to eat now that you didn't bring me anything? Did you do this on purpose? I yelled back even louder. I said I wouldn't bring it. Are you deaf or is there something wrong with your brain? Are you mentally challenged? Can't you understand simple words? At school, Sabrina and I rarely interacted, even though we were desk mates. She played her role as the school beauty, and I kept to myself as a nobody. Occasionally when she asked me to do something, although reluctant, I would still do it, feeling resentful. Today she was clearly angry and wanted to put me in my place, but she didn't expect me to react so differently. Sabrina was stunned for a couple of seconds. You've got some nerve, daring to shout at me? Do you want me to tell Mom and Dad when we get home, so they can teach you a lesson? I shrugged nonchalantly. Go ahead, you big baby. You. Sabrina pointed at me, unable to get any words out for a good while. You just wait and see. She glared at me fiercely before storming out, slamming the door. I could pretty much imagine how she would exaggerate the story when we went home for the weekend. Our parents would surely take her side and punish me. But I was no longer the Marina who desperately sought our parents' approval. I wouldn't take it lying down anymore. When we went home on Friday, Sabrina embellished the story about me not bringing her lunch and told our parents. The moment I stepped through the door, the TV remote came flying at me, hitting me square on the forehead. Ah! I cried out from the sharp pain. Mom pointed at me, cursing, "You ungrateful wretch. How could you? What's wrong with bringing your sister some lunch? She's your older sister, how could you let her go hungry all afternoon? I bet you're jealous of your sister's dancing talent and deliberately tried to starve her to make her ill. So young, yet so vicious. We should never have brought you here in the first place. You're nothing but a heartless ingrate." Dad's face was dark with anger too. "You weren't raised by us when you were little, that's why your character is so warped. From today onwards, your weekly allowance will be halved. It will only be restored when you realize your mistake. Now, apologize to your sister." Sabrina looked at me smugly, waiting for me to bow my head and apologize. I lowered the hand that was covering my forehead. "I won't apologize. You might as well kill me." As soon as the words left my mouth, Mom rushed over and slapped me hard across the face. She had swung her arm with full force. I crashed into the shoe cabinet beside me, but I held back my tears with all my might. I had anticipated this before coming home. The more vicious they were now, the more chaotic this house would become later. As Mom continued to berate me, I ran straight back to my bedroom and locked the door. I took out the phone hidden under my pillow and made a tearful video call to Grandma. In the past, to please Mom, I had unilaterally cut off contact with Grandma. Grandma might have her faults, but she had raised me, feeding me every meal. She loved me the most. As soon as the video connected, I immediately showed the red mark on my face and the bruise on my forehead. "Grandma, please help me. Mom and Dad want to beat me to death." I sobbed uncontrollably. On the other end of the video, Grandma immediately put down what she was doing and hurriedly set off with Grandpa. "Don't be afraid, Marina. Gran is coming to stand up for you. I'm not dead yet." How dare they bully my granddaughter like this? For hours later, Grandpa and Grandma arrived, banging furiously on the front door. By then it was dark outside. My parents and Sabrina were having dinner in the dining room, all cheerful and merry. As for me, hiding in my room, it was as if I didn't exist. My dad went to open the door. Before he could say a word, Grandpa slapped him across the face. "I sent Marina up here to have a good life, not for you to mistreat her," he shouted. "She's just a little girl, and you beat her without a second thought. You don't deserve to be parents." Grandma rushed straight at my mom, clapped her hands, and sat down on the floor wailing. "Oh, my poor Marina. Such a good child, and look how her face is all swollen from being hit. I raised that child from a baby, cherished her like the apple of my eye. How could she end up being beaten in your care? You both came from the same mother, how can there be such a biased mom in this world?" My mom wasn't about to back down. "As if you're not biased yourself? They're both your granddaughters, have you ever shown Sabrina a kind face?" Grandma ignored her and kept on wailing. The neighbors opened their doors, poking their heads out curiously to see what was happening. Seeing this, my dad tried to cover the handprint on his face and hurried to close the door. The living room was in chaos for quite a while, with Grandma crying and Mum cursing, neither giving an inch. Grandpa and my dad were the first to calm down. They each pulled their wives apart, trying to soothe them. The living room gradually quieted down. At this point, I timidly opened my door and walked out. "Grandma, Grandpa," I said softly. As soon as Grandma saw me, she embraced me with heartfelt concern. "Oh, Marina, why didn't you tell Grandma you were being mistreated? I bet it was your mum threatening you not to say anything, wasn't it? I always knew she wasn't a good one. Buying a house but not letting your grandpa and me live here. And turning you against us so you wouldn't contact us. It breaks my heart." My mum tried to argue, but my dad held her back. Grandpa waved his hand decisively. "Marina's A-levels are coming up soon. Don't you two understand how important they are? Here's what we'll do, your mom and I will stay here. That way, Marina won't become your punching bag again when we're gone. If you don't want her here, we'll take her back with us after her exams are over." My mom's voice was shrill. "You're going to stay here?" Grandma's voice was even louder. "I can't stay in my own son's house." Grandpa gave my dad a look. My dad could only nod in agreement. That night, Grandma slept in my room with me. She stroked my face tenderly. "Marina, dear, Grandma knows you don't like her. You want your mom's approval. But I raised you, love. How could I bear to see you mistreated?" My nose stung with emotion as I hugged her. "I do like you, Grandma. In my previous life, my mom always favored Sabrina, indulging her every whim while constantly putting me down. For a long time, I was extremely sensitive, anxious, and suffered from insomnia. It wasn't until much later that I slowly came to believe that my mom truly didn't like me. By the time I wanted to go back to Grandma, it was already too late. I'm sorry, Grandma. I shouldn't have stopped contacting you. She may have a difficult personality and many flaws, but the fact that she loves me is enough." The arrival of my grandparents plunged our home into a bizarre state. My parents and Sabrina were affectionate towards each other, while my grandparents fussed over me, as if trying to outdo the other side. It felt eerily unlike a family. I couldn't understand why I had such a strange family. When returning to school for the weekend, Sabrina seemed to have been instructed not to speak to me. I was quite content with that arrangement. However, I didn't expect Austin to ambush me just before the evening study session. In a dimly lit alley, he firmly blocked my path. His gaze fell on me, carrying a hint of intimidation. "Marina, I don't like people who don't listen. Now, go apologize to Sabrina immediately." I instantly understood. Sabrina had gone to him to complain. My eyes darted as I said, "You fancy my sister, right? I can help you pursue her. Look, she's already talking to you today, isn't she?" Austin's eyes narrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" I got straight to the point. "My sister hates me. The more I anger her, the more she wants to get back at me. She knows I like you, so she'll get close to you, and then..." I deliberately paused. Austin pressed, "And then what?" "Then, if you pretend to like me, she'll naturally do everything in her power to chase after you." Austin seemed tempted, but hesitated when he looked at me. I knew he found me distasteful. My sister is the school beauty, lots of people fancy her, but to have her actively pursue someone. "All right," Austin agreed without hesitation. I smirked. Let the fun game begin. The teachers were quite lax during weekend evening study sessions, so Austin brazenly came to our class. Day students didn't need to attend evening sessions. So there were some empty seats, and Sabrina sat far away from me. But Austin sat in the empty seat behind me. I caught a glimpse of Sabrina's surprised expression. Suddenly, Austin poked my back with a pen. I turned around, and he playfully handed me a blank note. He just wanted to catch Sabrina's attention. I played along, pretending to write a reply before passing it back to him. Sabrina was visibly angry. She stormed over, reaching out to snatch the note. I quickly pocketed the note and lowered my head to focus on my exercises, pretending not to see her. Behind me, Austin let out a flirtatious whistle towards Sabrina. Sabrina was both furious and embarrassed. After the evening session ended, I deliberately took my time packing up, waiting for them to leave first. Then I quietly followed behind. On the way back to the dormitories, Sabrina blocked Austin's path and angrily demanded, "What were you passing notes about? Didn't you promise me you'd make Marina apologize to me?" Austin folded his arms. "Sorry, I suddenly realized Marina is quite cute. And she's always liked me and is obedient. I thought I'd give it a try with her." Sabrina's voice turned shrill. "You like her?" Austin nodded, "A bit, yeah." Sabrina looked at him in disbelief. "But don't you like me?" Austin raised an eyebrow. "Did I ever say that?" The scene fell silent. I was thoroughly enjoying this drama from behind. Finally, Sabrina gritted her teeth and said, "You can't like Marina." "Why not?" Austin feigned confusion. "Because I like you. Dump Marina and be with me." I knew without looking that Austin was elated. He pretended to hesitate. Marina has done so much to pursue me, I'm touched. You. Sabrina was completely led by the nose. Fine, I'll chase after you too. Just you wait. Even after Sabrina left, the smile never left Austin's face. It was clear he was overjoyed. I hope he'll be just as happy later. The next day, Sabrina started trying to win Austin's favor. Without any prompting from me, Austin was already playing hard to get. Every time Sabrina made an advance, he would pretend to be intimate with me while keeping her on the hook. When Sabrina got angry, he would go and comfort her. This scene was exactly like their chat history. While they played their games, I buried myself in revision. In my previous life, I graduated from teacher training college. And later became a secondary school teacher, so these topics were a piece of cake for me. But to be safe, I still needed to do more practice questions. After all, this time, I didn't want to just be a secondary school teacher. Soon, rumors started spreading around school that the prettiest girl was chasing after Austin. It was a rare PE lesson, with rare sunshine. I was sunbathing on the lawn while reading a book, with my back to the light. At that moment, someone sat down behind me and started chatting away. I told you our Austin is irresistible. See, even the prettiest girl is throwing herself at him now. Oh please, what prettiest girl? She just dances a bit and won some awards. She's not good enough for Austin at all. Austin's voice couldn't hide his boasting. All right, girls are sensitive, don't talk like that. Sabrina has been chasing me for a while. It's not good to keep her hanging, you know. For confessions, a man should take the lead. Meanwhile, the form tutor had caught wind of the gossip and called Sabrina to the staff room. Sabrina, even though you're taking the arts route, your academic grades are still very important, you know? Faced with the tutor's serious expression, Sabrina's face turned pale. I know, sir. The form tutor didn't speak too bluntly. After emphasizing the importance of A-levels, he let Sabrina go. By the time I finished listening to Austin's bragging with his mates, I had already returned from the sports field. As soon as Sabrina came out, I pulled her to one side. Seeing it was me, she immediately shook off my hand in disgust. Marina, did you tell on me? Don't think you can do whatever you want just because Grandpa and Grandma are here. That's my parents' house, they can kick them out anytime. You too. When buying that house, Mom and Dad didn't have enough money and borrowed quite a bit from Grandpa and Grandma. At that time, when Grandpa and Grandma heard that Sabrina had dance classes, they wanted to sign me up for an interest class I liked too. They thought that whatever Sabrina had, I should have too. Even though it was far to travel from the countryside for interest classes, and hard to pick up and drop off. But because they bought this house, they didn't have extra money to pay for my interest classes. The deed is in Mom and Dad's names, but half the money for the house came from Grandpa and Grandma. So, Mom and Dad have no right to kick Grandpa and Grandma and me out. Unless you want to be condemned by everyone. I pulled you over to tell you that we've both been tricked by Austin Dawson. Sabrina was stunned for a moment. What do you mean? Austin told me he likes you, but gave me a chance to pursue him. Then he told you he likes me, and let you chase him. He's deceiving both of us, trying to have his cake and eat it too. Sabrina prided herself on being above it all, and couldn't stand being deceived or played with. Unfortunately, she was too stupid to realize it. I just heard that he's planning to confess to you in a couple of days. With that, I turned and left. I didn't even need to give her any tips. Sabrina was an expert at hitting people where it hurt. I remember when I first came to the city, for a while I couldn't even lift my head in front of her. Back then I didn't understand why she was so malicious towards me when we were blood relatives. Gradually I realized it was because Mom and Dad didn't like me, and she was following their example. But now, it doesn't matter anymore. Because I don't like them either. Soon, time arrived at the point I remembered in my memory. My birthday. Also Sabrina's birthday. The wind was strong that day, and the teachers were in a meeting. Austin prepared flowers, balloons and gifts, planning to confess his feelings to Sabrina at the entrance of the girls' dormitory. He asked someone to call Sabrina down. Sabrina saw Austin from the balcony of her dorm room, but didn't come down for a long time. She sent someone to say, "Sabrina is angry." She says last time when she was called to the office, she was the only one there. She thinks you lack courage. Please tell her that I didn't know she was called to the office at that time. I was. Before Austin could finish, the messenger turned and left. To show his determination, he stood downstairs for an hour. Many people gathered around to watch. Austin, like the male lead in a novel, shouted Sabrina's name loudly and recited the confession he had memorized. "Sabrina, I've been captivated since I first saw you, but as my feelings deepened, I became timid." I hid in the crowd, listening to him finish this heartfelt confession. The onlookers spontaneously applauded, cheered, and urged Sabrina to come down quickly. Finally, Sabrina came down leisurely, with an arrogant expression. "Austin Dawson, you think too highly of yourself. I was just pretending to play along with you. How did you take it seriously? Someone like you, I wouldn't want even if you were free. Your grades are poor, and your character is awful. No wonder your parents divorced and didn't want you. If I had a son like you, I'd rather be dead." The last sentence struck Austin right in the heart. The crowd suddenly fell silent. Austin's face froze, his expression turning terrifying. "Sabrina Burke, say that again." Sabrina snorted coldly. "I said, your parents are divorced, you're just a child without a father or mother." "Ah." Before Sabrina could finish, Austin angrily threw the flowers in her face. "Sabrina Burke." He furiously tried to rush at her but was held back by others. Calm down, calm down." Austin hated it most when people mentioned his parents. At that moment, he seemed to want to tear Sabrina apart. I suddenly realized, maybe he didn't like Sabrina that much after all. Perhaps what's unattainable always seems the best. In the end, Austin was forcibly dragged away. Marina was also startled and hurriedly returned to her dorm. On the ground, only the slightly wilted bouquet remained. Identical to the one given to me in my previous life. In my previous life, Austin came to confess his feelings for me in the afternoon. But this afternoon, he didn't come to find me. Instead, he was publicly criticized for his negative influence. I figured Austin probably wouldn't come looking for me anymore. It was quite a pity, I had wanted to kick him while he was down. Today is my and Sabrina's birthday. In the evening, we asked our teachers for permission to skip the evening self-study session and go home to celebrate. Unlike previous years, the table wasn't just set with Sabrina's favorite strawberry cake, but also had my favorite mango cake. Because Sabrina is allergic to mangoes, eating them causes blisters around her lips. Mangoes were never allowed in our house. Even though I love mangoes, and even though Sabrina has grown up and can control herself, they still weren't allowed in the house. In front of the mango cake stood Grandpa and Grandma, their faces wrinkled with smiles. Mom didn't look too pleased, but she didn't say anything. Only when she saw Sabrina did her face light up with joy. "Come here, Sabrina. After today, our Sabrina will be an adult. We couldn't get time off work, so it's a bit rushed. We can't give you a proper coming-of-age ceremony right now. But after your A-levels, we'll definitely throw you a grand coming-of-age party." Sabrina sat affectionately between Mom and Dad, hugging them and acting coy. "Thank you, Mom and Dad." Seeing this, Grandma came over and took my hand. "We'll have a coming-of-age ceremony for you too, at the biggest hotel in town." I smiled at Grandma. "That sounds lovely, thank you, Grandma. One dining table, 2 cakes, 6 people. We should have been the closest of families, yet we were divided into 2 factions, each occupying one end of the table. When it came time to make a wish, I hesitated to blow out the candles. Grandma gently asked what was wrong. I looked across at Mom, Dad, and Sabrina. For the last time, I asked the question that had been bothering me. "Dad, Mom, Sis, why do you dislike me so much? Since it's my birthday, could you please tell me?" These were words I never asked in my previous life. Words I always knew, but wanted to hear them say out loud. Mom was the first to snort coldly, but as she was about to say something nasty, Dad interrupted her with a cough. "Marina, dear, we don't dislike you. It's just that you weren't with us when you were little. In the future, your mom and I will definitely try our best to make it up to you." Mom pursed her lips. "You were always so easy to take care of, not like your sister who was always unwell and crying." I couldn't help but focus more attention on her. "Now that you're grown up too, just get along well with your sister. Whatever she has, you'll have too." Sabrina, on the other hand, was quite honest in her response. "I always thought Mom and Dad only had one daughter. I didn't know we were twins. Suddenly having a sister appear out of nowhere to steal Mom and Dad's love, who could handle that?" I looked at them and smiled bitterly. They were avoiding the question. Or rather, avoiding the mistake they made back then. I closed my eyes and made my wish. My wish is to never see Dad, Mom, or my sister ever again. I opened my eyes and blew out the candles. When my parents heard this, their expressions immediately changed. "Marina Burke, what do you mean by that? Have we been too lenient with you lately? If it weren't for your grandmother stopping us, do you think we wouldn't have kept you with us? If you want to blame someone, blame your grandmother. It has nothing to do with me." Dad also shouted angrily. "I thought you were too young, so I didn't want to scold you, but how could you make such a cruel wish? I really regret not teaching you properly when you were little." Sabrina pressed her lips together, not saying a word. Grandma wanted to speak up for me, but I stopped her. I looked at them and said, "I wish the three of you a happy life together. Since the decision they made back then was a mistake, let them continue with that mistake. The prejudices deep in human nature cannot be changed." Because we still had school tomorrow, Sabrina and I had to return to school after the birthday celebration. On the way back, Grandma seemed to want to say something several times but held back. As we approached the school gates, she finally called out to me, her eyes cloudy. "Marina, it was Grandma's fault for insisting on keeping you with us back then. How can a person live without their parents?" I turned back and hugged her, feeling a lump in my throat. "Having you and Grandpa is enough. In my previous life, I also thought I couldn't live without parents. But in the end, the more you want something, the less you have it. Rather than stubbornly pursuing things that don't belong to you, it's better to let go." Even if Grandma made 1,000 mistakes back then, in my eyes, she loves me enough. In my eyes, loving me is enough. After returning to school, Sabrina and I became even more like strangers. Moreover, she was busy preparing for her university entrance exams, leaving her with no time for me. I continued to bury myself in my studies, but unexpectedly, Austin appeared again. This time, he brought a beautiful, fresh bouquet of flowers. It had only been a week since his failed confession to Sabrina. At first, everyone treated him as a topic of gossip. But everyone was also busy studying and solving practice problems. So after a few days, they couldn't be bothered to mention it anymore. Given Austin's usual temperament, he would have exploded long ago and taught everyone who mocked him a lesson. But this time, he endured it for a whole week. How strange. When Austin cornered me, it was on a small path behind the dormitory. This time he was smarter and didn't approach me in a crowd. He blocked my way but hesitated to speak. So I asked, "Do you need something?" As soon as I spoke, Austin's eyes reddened, as if he was about to cry. I quickly took 2 steps back. Something was very wrong with him. Then Austin slowly began to speak. "Marina, after all these years together, I've fallen for you, but when feelings run deep, I become timid." This confession was different from before. But it didn't matter. The opportunity to kick him while he was down had finally arrived. So, I patiently waited for Austin to finish. When he looked at me full of expectation, I coldly replied, "You? I wouldn't date you if you were the last person on earth." Austin's eyes widened in shock, as if he hadn't expected this reaction from me. Good, I felt satisfied. I turned to leave. Unexpectedly, Austin called out, "Rena." That familiar Rena from his lips carried an indescribable emotion. Almost instantly, I realized Austin Dawson was like me. He had also been reborn. Rena was a nickname he only started using after we got married. Once, by chance, I met Sabrina and her husband and heard him call her Rena. At the time, I didn't think much of it because we both had Rena in our names. But now I realized it was because Austin had used me as a substitute for Sabrina. How disgusting. My expression turned cold. Austin blocked my path again. Rena, listen to me, there's nothing between Sabrina and me. After she deleted me, we cut off all contact. What about before she deleted you? I asked. Austin and I got together in our final year of secondary school. But he locked his phone in his second year of university. What about those 2 years in between? Austin could only weakly reply, there was nothing between us. You have to believe me, I love you. Why else would I have married you? I laughed coldly, then why did you get so drunk when she got divorced? Dawson, stop deceiving yourself and don't come to disgust me. Austin still wouldn't give up. Rena, I know you're just angry. You love me so much, how could you bear to abandon me? Look, even though my grades weren't good and my family background was ordinary, you still had a crush on me for years. How could you not love me anymore? Seeing him so confident, I couldn't help but laugh angrily. Do you know why I had a crush on you? He looked at me. Because I mistook you for someone else. In my first year of secondary school, when I had just moved to the city, I got on the wrong bus and got lost. I didn't have a mobile phone then, couldn't remember my parents' number, and had no money left. I waited and waited at the last stop, hoping a kind driver would take me back. But the last stop was too remote, with buses only once an hour. The sky gradually darkened. I started to get scared and cried anxiously. At that moment, a boy wearing a hat and mask came over, coughing and asking, "Do you need help?" He was wearing the same school uniform as me. I felt like I had found a lifeline. Crying messily, I explained what had happened. He had a cold but still comforted me in his hoarse voice. Then he called a taxi to take me home and paid for it. He was wearing a hat and mask, so I didn't know what he looked like. But I remembered his Stitch wallet. Later, I saw Austin use the same wallet when paying, and his build and height were similar. So I thought it was him. I started paying attention to him. Gradually, I fell for him. After getting together with Austin, during a casual conversation, I realized he wasn't that person. But by then, I liked him. So I just went along with the mistake. After hearing this, Austin couldn't believe it. A wallet? Because of a wallet? Those wallets sell hundreds a day in shops. Just because of a wallet. I interrupted him, it's not about the wallet, it's about that person. Unfortunately, I don't know his name or what he looks like. Austin, if I hadn't mistaken you for him, I wouldn't have noticed you, let alone liked you. Austin stared at me for a long time before finally speaking. Are you saying your feelings for me were stolen? I thought for a moment and shook my head. Not really, because you didn't know I had mistaken you for someone else. But this time, I won't like you again. You're not worth it. Not worth it at all. My love was timid yet passionate. His love was fake and couldn't stand scrutiny. After I left, Austin stood there alone for a long, long time. In the end, he laughed bitterly, laughing until tears came to his eyes. The A-levels were fast approaching. I performed quite well and felt confident about getting into a top university. Sabrina, however, had her portfolio damaged by other art students during her interview due to carelessness. Her results were disappointing, leaving her with no choice but to take A-levels. But she had fallen too far behind in her studies and struggled to catch up. On the day the A-level results were released, she locked herself in her room. Meanwhile, I was preparing to return to the countryside with my grandparents. At this point, my mom started trying to persuade me to stay. Marina, I was wrong before. I shouldn't have treated you that way. We're family, we should be together. My dad chimed in. When we bought this house, we chose it because it had 3 bedrooms, one for you and one for Sabrina. I found it somewhat amusing. How ironic that they were now offering me things I no longer needed. As I said before, I wish your family of 3 all the best. I turned and left with my grandparents. At first, they tried to convince me to go back. Later, seeing I was unmoved, they stopped trying. As the start of term approached, I heard that my parents wanted Sabrina to resit her A-levels. But she chose to attend a vocational college instead. My parents were very disappointed in her and threatened not to acknowledge her if she didn't res it. Sabrina retorted, like how you didn't want to acknowledge Marina back then? They fell silent immediately. When it was time to report to university, I sent my luggage to the school ahead of time, traveling light. But it seemed everyone had the same idea. In the end, the path from the delivery point to the dormitories was piled high with luggage. As I was worrying about how to find mine, a gentle voice came from behind me. Do you need any help?